What if the thing breaking you is also the thing making you? You wake up some mornings and you don't recognize yourself anymore. Not in the mirror. That face is still yours. But inside something has shifted. Something fundamental. Like a language you used to speak fluently has gone silent on your tongue. You thought you knew where you were going. You had the plan, the vision, the next logical step. And now you're standing in the middle of your own life, wondering how you got here and why it all feels so unfamiliar. People keep asking, "How are you?" And you smile. You say fine. You say busy. You say the things people need to hear. But inside, there's a question you can't answer. Who am I becoming? Not who you were, not who you're supposed to be, but who you are right now, in this strange, suspended moment where nothing feels solid anymore. You're not depressed. You're not broken. You're just different. And that difference doesn't have a name yet. It doesn't have a shape. It's just this quiet hum. Beneath everything, a feeling that the old you is fading and the new you hasn't arrived. So you search. You scroll. You read. You listen to voices like this one, hoping someone will tell you what's happening. Hoping someone will say the thing that makes it all make sense. But here's what no one tells you. The confusion is the process. The not knowing is not a problem to solve. It's a passage to walk through. You're not lost. You're being written. And rewriting is never clean. It's never obvious. It doesn't announce itself with trumpets and clarity. It arrives like dawn, slowly, quietly, almost imperceptibly. You don't notice the darkness lifting until suddenly you can see. But right now you're in the in-between. The space where the old story has ended and the new one hasn't begun. And that space, that liminal, wordless, formless space feels like erasure. It feels like loss. Because in a way, it is. You are losing the person you spent years becoming. The identity you built, brick by brick. The version of yourself that knew what it wanted, what it believed, what it stood for. That person is dissolving, not because you failed, not because you chose wrong, but because you outgrew them. And growth, real growth, requires death. Not the kind of death we fear, the end of breath, the stopping of the heart, but the death of the self we thought we had to be, the death of certainty, the death of the familiar. This is what spiritual traditions have always known. The mystics, the poets, the ones who walked into the wilderness and came back changed, they all spoke of this. They called it different things. The dark night, the dissolution, the breaking open, but they were all describing the same thing. The moment when the soul outgrows the container it's been living in. And when that happens, the container has to crack. You feel it, don't you? That cracking, that slow, inevitable breaking apart of the structures you relied on, the beliefs that once felt true, the desires that once felt urgent, the fears that once felt so real. Now, they're just quieter, distant, like voices from another life. And in their place, this vast, open uncertainty. You don't know what you want anymore. You don't know what matters. You don't even know what you believe. And that terrifies you. Because if you're not the person you were, and you don't know who you're becoming, then what are you? Here's the answer. You are the question itself. You are the space where the old self and the new self meet. You are the moment of transformation unfolding in real time. You are not the finished thing. You are the making of the thing. And the making is messy. It's uncertain. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't look like progress. It looks like falling apart. But falling apart is not the opposite of coming together. It's the prerequisite. Think of it this way. A seed doesn't become a tree by staying a seed. It has to crack. It has to surrender its form, its boundaries, its identity as a seed. It has to dissolve into the soil, into the dark, into the unknown. And in that dissolution, something new begins. The seed doesn't know it's becoming a tree. It just knows it's breaking. That's you. You're breaking because you're becoming. And the becoming doesn't look like what you thought it would. It doesn't feel empowering or clear or beautiful. It feels disorienting. It feels like walking through fog with no map, no compass, no destination. But that's because you're not supposed to know the destination yet. You're supposed to learn how to walk without one. You're supposed to discover that you don't need the map, that the path appears as you move. That trust is built in the walking, not in the knowing. This is what it means to be rewritten. It means letting go of the story you've been telling yourself. The story about who you are, what you're worth, what you're here to do. It means releasing your grip on certainty and allowing yourself to exist in the unknown. And yes, that's terrifying, because we are taught to fear the unknown. We are taught that not knowing is a weakness. That confusion is failure. That if we can't explain ourselves, we must be lost. But what if the opposite is true? What if the moments when you can't explain yourself are the moments when you're closest to the truth? What if not knowing is not the absence of wisdom, but the beginning of it? You're not lost. You're just between stories. And the next one. It's writing itself. Right now. Through you. In the silence. In the uncertainty. In the quiet unraveling of everything you thought you knew. Let it. Your ego doesn't want to be rewritten. It wants to be right. It wants to be stable. It wants to stay exactly as it is. Because that's what the ego does. It protects. It preserves. It clings to the known, even when the known no longer serves you. And so it fights. It whispers that you're failing, that you've lost your way, that everyone else has it figured out, and you're the only one still wandering. It tells you to go back, to return to what was safe, what was certain, what was familiar, even if it was killing you. Because to the ego, death by stagnation is preferable to transformation. At least stagnation is predictable. At least you know what to expect. But transformation is chaos. It's risk. It's the possibility that you might become someone you don't recognize, and the ego can't allow that. So it builds walls. It tells stories. It makes you believe that this confusion is a problem, that this uncertainty is evidence of something wrong with you. But here's the truth the ego will never tell you. The discomfort you're feeling is not a sign that you're broken. It's a sign that you're breaking free. Every time you feel that tightness in your chest, that restlessness in your bones, that quiet voice saying something has to change, that's not anxiety. That's awakening. That's your soul knocking on the walls of the life you've built, asking to be let out. And yes, the ego will resist. It will flood you with doubt. It will replay every mistake, every failure, every moment you fell short. It will convince you that you don't deserve to change, that you're not strong enough, not wise enough, not ready enough. But the ego is not the enemy. It's just scared, because it knows on some deep, unconscious level that if you keep walking this path, If you keep allowing yourself to unravel, it will lose its control. It will have to surrender the throne. And for the ego, that feels like annihilation. So it clings. It tightens. It makes the transformation harder than it needs to be. But here's what the mystics understood. The ego cannot be destroyed. It can only be transcended. You don't kill it. You don't silence it. You don't wage war against it. You simply stop obeying it. You stop letting it run the show. You stop believing that its fear is your truth. And slowly, gently, you create space between the voice in your head and the awareness listening to it. That space, that gap, is freedom. It's the place where you realize, I am not my thoughts. I am not my fears. I am not the story my ego keeps telling me. I am the one witnessing it all. And when you touch that awareness, even for a moment, everything shifts. Because now you're not trying to fix yourself. You're not trying to go back to who you were. You're simply watching the unraveling with curiosity instead of judgment. You're asking, what is this teaching me? What is this making space for? And in that question, the panic softens, the tightness loosens, the fog begins to thin. You realize that you're not falling apart, you're falling open. And there's a difference. Falling apart means losing yourself. Falling open means finding yourself beneath all the layers you didn't know you were carrying. It means discovering that who you are is not the role you play, the mask you wear, the identity you've constructed. Who you are is the awareness beneath it, all the spaciousness, the stillness, the presence that remains when everything else dissolves. And that presence is unshakable. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need certainty. It doesn't need to know what happens next. It simply is. And when you connect with that, when you rest in that quiet, witnessing awareness, you realize something profound. You were never lost. You were just looking in the wrong place. You were looking outside yourself for the answers, for the plan, for the reassurance that you're on the right path. But the path isn't out there. It's in here, in the stillness, in the not knowing, in the willingness to let go and trust that something wiser than your fear is guiding you. The Sufis had a teaching about this. They called it fana, the dissolution of the self, not as punishment, not as loss, but as liberation. They understood that to find God, to touch truth, to know love, you have to lose yourself first. You have to surrender the small, separate self that clings and grasps and fears. You have to let it dissolve into something larger. And in that dissolution, you don't disappear. You expand. You become more yourself than you've ever been. Not the constructed self. Not the ego's version. But the original self, the one you were before the world taught you who to be. That's what's happening to you right now. You're returning, not to who you were, but to who you've always been underneath it all. And the journey back is disorienting because you're shedding layers you didn't know were there. You're releasing identities you thought were essential. You're letting go of beliefs that felt like truth, but were just borrowed ideas. And every time you let go, there's grief. Because even the things that hurt us become familiar. Even the cages we live in start to feel like home. But you're not meant to live in a cage. You're meant to fly. And right now, in this strange, uncertain, in between space, you're learning how to open your wings. The ego will protest. It will tell you to stay grounded, stay small, stay safe. But your soul knows better. It knows this is the moment. This is the opening. This is the invitation you've been waiting for. So let the ego have its last stand. Let it rage and doubt and fear. And then, gently, quietly, choose differently. Choose trust over certainty. Choose presence over planning. Choose the mystery over the map. Because the truth is, you're not being rewritten by something outside yourself. You're being rewritten by the part of you that always knew the way. You don't notice it at first. It's subtle, quiet, like the first hint of warmth after a long winter. You wake up, and the heaviness that's been sitting on your chest for months, it's lighter, not gone, but lighter. You move through your day, and the questions that used to torment you, who am I? What am I doing? What's the point? They're still there, but they don't sting the same way. They're just questions. And for the first time in a long time, you're okay with not having the answers. This is the emergence. This is what happens when you stop resisting the rewriting and start allowing it. You don't suddenly have it all figured out. You don't wake up with a 10-year plan and a clear sense of purpose. But you do wake up with something more valuable. Peace with the unknown, comfort in the becoming, trust in the process. And that trust, quiet, unshakable, earned through the dark, that trust changes everything. Because now you're not waiting for clarity to arrive before you move. You're moving in the uncertainty. You're taking steps without knowing where they lead. You're making choices not because you're sure, but because they feel true. And true is different from right. Right is something the mind decides. It's logical. It's safe. It's what makes sense to everyone else. But true is something the soul recognizes. It's a resonance. A quiet yes that doesn't need to explain itself. It's the thing you feel in your body before you understand it with your mind. And you're learning to follow that now. You're learning to listen beneath the noise, beneath the ego's fear, beneath the world's expectations, beneath your own conditioning to the part of you that simply knows. Not because it has all the answers, but because it doesn't need them. This is what the mystics meant when they spoke of faith, not blind belief, not religious dogma, but a deep, embodied trust in the intelligence of life itself. The trust that says, I don't know where I'm going, but I know I'm being led. The trust that says, I don't know who I'm becoming, but I know I'm becoming something truer. The trust that says, I don't need to see the whole path. I just need to take the next step. And so you do. You take the next step, and then the next, and then the next, and slowly, quietly, the path reveals itself not as a fixed destination, but as a living conversation between you and the world, between your longing and life's response, between the question you carry and the answer that unfolds. You start to notice things you couldn't see before. The way the light falls through the window in the morning. The way a stranger's kindness lands differently now. The way silence, once terrifying, has become a refuge. You start to feel things you couldn't feel before. Gratitude, not for what you've achieved, but for what you've survived. Compassion, not just for others, but for yourself, for the version of you that didn't know, that stumbled, that got lost. You start to understand things you couldn't understand before. That the loneliness was making space for solitude. That the confusion was clearing room for clarity. That the falling apart was always a falling into place. You were never broken. You were always whole. You just couldn't see it yet. Because wholeness isn't something you achieve. It's something you remember. It's something you uncover, layer by layer, belief by belief, fear by fear. And every time you let go of something that wasn't yours to carry, every time you release a story, an identity, an expectation, you get lighter. Not because you're losing yourself, but because you're finding yourself. The you that exists before the shoulds. The you that exists beneath the roles. The you that doesn't need to perform or prove or pretend. The original you. The quiet, steady, unshakable you. That's who's emerging. Not a new person. Not a better version. Just the truest version, the one that's been waiting patiently beneath all the noise. And here's the beautiful, terrifying thing. This version of you doesn't fit the old life. The old routines feel too small. The old conversations feel too shallow. The old goals feel too hollow. Not because they were wrong, but because you've outgrown them. And that means there's more letting go ahead. More shedding. More releasing. More rewriting. Because transformation isn't a one-time event. It's a spiral, a rhythm, a continuous return to truth. You'll fall back into old patterns. You'll forget what you've learned. You'll slip into fear and doubt and the illusion of separation. And then you'll remember. You'll come back to the breath, to the body, to the present moment, to the quiet knowing that doesn't need words. And each time you return more deeply, with more trust, with more grace, with more willingness to let life move through you instead of against you. This is the practice, not perfection. Not arrival, just this gentle, imperfect returning. This humble acknowledgement that you don't have it all figured out. And that's exactly as it should be. Because the ones who claim to have it all figured out, they've stopped growing. They've stopped listening. They've stopped being rewritten. But you're still soft, still open, still willing to be shaped by life. And that willingness is not weakness. It's courage. It's wisdom. It's the mark of a soul that understands the point is not to become fixed. The point is to remain fluid, to allow the rewriting, to trust the unfolding, to say yes to what wants to emerge, even when you don't understand it yet. So yes, you're different now. Yes, the old you is gone. Yes, the path looks nothing like what you imagined. But look at you, still here, still breathing, still willing to take the next step even without the map. That's not being lost. That's being alive. Now that you know you're not lost, you're being rewritten. Now that you understand the confusion is not failure, but passage. Now that you've touched, even briefly, the awareness beneath the fear, what do you do with that? Here's what you don't do. You don't rush to fill the space. You don't scramble to rebuild the old structures, the old certainties, the old self. You don't search for a new identity to replace the one that's dissolving, because that's just the ego trying to regain control. Instead, you do something radical. You rest in the not knowing. You let the space remain open. You let the questions stay unanswered. You let yourself exist in the mystery without needing to solve it. And that simple, profound act of allowing is where the magic happens. Because when you stop forcing, life starts flowing. When you stop grasping, the answers arrive. When you stop trying to become someone, you remember who you already are. This is the invitation, not to do more, but to be more. More present, more aware, more honest, more alive. It's an invitation to meet yourself exactly where you are, not where you think you should be, not where you were, not where you're going, but here, now, in this breath, in this moment, in this beautifully imperfect, uncertain, unfinished becoming. Because this moment is all you ever have. The past is a story. The future is a fantasy. But this quiet ordinary. Sacred now, this is real. And when you bring your full attention here, when you stop living in your head and drop into your body, into your senses, into the raw aliveness of being, you realize something stunning. You're already whole. You don't need to become anything. You don't need to achieve anything. You don't need to figure anything out. You just need to be here. Fully, deeply, without armor, without agenda, without the need to be anyone other than exactly who you are in this moment. And when you do that, when you stop performing and start being, life responds. Not always in the ways you expect, not always on your timeline, but in ways that are truer, deeper, more aligned than anything you could have planned. Synchronicities appear, doors open, people arrive, opportunities unfold, not because you forced them, but because you made space for them, because you stopped blocking the flow with fear and control and the need to know, and you allowed yourself to be moved. This is what it means to live from the soul instead of the ego. The ego plans, the soul trusts, the ego clings, the soul releases. The ego needs to know. The soul is content to wonder. And the more you practice this, the more you choose trust over certainty, presence over planning, being over doing, the more you realize. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to stay awake. Awake to the moment. Awake to the feeling. Awake to the quiet guidance that's always there, beneath the noise, waiting for you to listen. That guidance doesn't come as a booming voice or a clear directive. It comes as a whisper, a nudge, a pull. A sense of rightness that doesn't make sense but feels undeniable. And when you follow that, even when it's scary, even when it doesn't look like what you thought you wanted, that's when life becomes luminous. That's when you stop living from the outside in and start living from the inside out. That's when you stop asking, what should I do? And start asking what feels true. And true is always simpler than you think. It's the conversation you've been avoiding, the boundary you need to set, the dream you're too scared to pursue, the rest you're too guilty to take, the love you're too afraid to claim. It's the small, honest, uncomfortable thing that your soul keeps whispering and your ego keeps dismissing. Listen to that whisper. Not once, not when it's convenient, but again and again and again. Make it your practice, your prayer, your path. Every morning, ask, what is true for me today? Not what's true for anyone else, not what should be true, not what was true yesterday, but what is alive right now, in this moment, in this body, in this heart. And then, as best you can, honor it. Without explanation, without justification, without needing everyone to understand, just honor it. Because your life is not a performance. It's not a test. It's not something you can get right or wrong. It's an unfolding, a becoming, a series of small, sacred choices to stay true to yourself, even when the path is unclear. And yes, there will be moments when you doubt, when you forget, when you slip back into fear and the illusion that you need to figure it all out. That's okay. You're human. This is the work. The work is not to never doubt. The work is to notice the doubt and choose trust anyway. The work is not to never fear. The work is to feel the fear and move forward anyway. The work is not to always know. The work is to embrace the mystery and walk into it anyway. Because on the other side of that mystery is the life you've been longing for. Not the life you planned. Not the life you thought you wanted. But the life that's waiting for the real you, the one who's being revealed, layer by layer, breath by breath, choice by choice. That life is already here. It's in the stillness you've been avoiding. The uncertainty you've been resisting. The becoming you've been fighting. It's in the rewriting. So let yourself be rewritten. Let the old you dissolve. Let the new you emerge. Let the mystery hold you. You're not lost. You never were. You're exactly where you need to be. And the part of you that knows that the quiet, steady, unshakable part, that part, has been here all along, waiting, watching, trusting that you'd remember. And now you have. So take a breath, feel your feet on the ground, notice that you're here, that you're alive, that you're still becoming. And know this: whatever comes next, you're ready. Not because you have all the answers, but because you've learned to walk without them. And that beautiful soul, that is everything.